In the heart of a busy store, a single insult sparks tension that ripples through the entire space. Now the arrogance of one woman collides with the quiet strength of a man who refuses to bend. A symbolic act shifts the balance, and the air thickens. With the promise of something greater yet to be revealed, don't even think about touching that purse. People like you steal. The words slice through the quiet hum of the department store like a jagged piece of glass. Shoppers froze mid-step. The clinking of hangers stopped. Somewhere, a cashier's hands trembled above a register key. All eyes shifted toward the woman who stood near the handbag display, her polished nails gripping the strap of her designer tote as if clutching proof of her own status. She was white. Dressed in a cream-colored blazer, lips painted a sharp red, her chin tilted high in practiced superiority. Her voice carried, dripping with the entitlement of someone who believed the floor beneath. Her heels was hers alone. Across from her stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed neatly in a dark blue button-up. His skin, a deep brown, caught the overhead fluorescent lights. He did not flinch. He did not even blink. His calmness was almost unnatural against the storm she spat in his face. The shoppers didn't know what to do, half turned away, to browse sweaters or scarves, while others lingered, wide-eyed, waiting. This was the kind of moment that drew in silence and magnified it, feeding on it. The woman's voice rose louder. "I saw you eyeing it. Don't try to deny it. Men like you don't belong in stores like this. Security." Her words whipped through, the aisles echoing against mirrors and racks. The sound of them was heavier than steel. He remained still. His hands, loose at his sides, bore no tension. His breathing was slow, measured. The man's eyes, steady and unbothered, fixed on her. Without anger, almost as though he was watching her collapse under the weight of her own words. A child clung to his mother's hand nearby. The mother whispered, "Don't stare," but her voice shook. "Shh." An old man by the watches shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening as if he'd seen this scene too many times before. The woman, emboldened by the hush, took one step closer. She snatched the man's shopping bag from his hand, ripping it open. A symbolic act, violent in its arrogance. The crumpled paper tore, spilling neatly folded shirts onto the polished tile floor. She pointed at the shirts as though they were evidence of some crime. "See? Probably stolen." "Where's your receipt? Where is it?" "Show us." Gasps cut through the crowd. Someone muttered, "This is too much," but no one moved to stop her. Finally, the man bent down slowly, not in shame, not in guilt, but with a kind of patience that silenced even the harshest breaths. He picked up one of the shirts, shook the dust from it, and folded it again with precise care, as though reclaiming dignity from her chaos. Then he slipped a receipt from his back pocket, holding it up quietly between two fingers. His voice came low but resonant, carrying through the stillness. "You look at me and see a thief. I look at you and see fear dressed as pride." The words hung there, heavier than any accusation, more cutting than any insult. The woman blinked, faltering for a fraction of a second before quickly masking it with another sneer. Security, she barked again, desperate now, but something had shifted. The crowd no longer looked at him with suspicion. They looked at her, her trembling lip hidden beneath defiance. At the nervous flicker in her eyes, somewhere at the edge of the crowd, a store manager had stepped forward, radio in hand. His expression was unreadable. He looked at the shirts on the floor, the receipt in the man's hand, and the woman whose rage seemed to unravel by the second. And just before the manager could speak, just before order could return to the chaos, the man tucked the receipt back into his pocket and said, calm as ever, "Before this is over, you'll regret what you just tried to do." A ripple passed through the room, like a prelude to something bigger, something waiting to unfold. And then without warning, the sharp chime of the woman's phone echoed from her bag. She reached inside, fumbling for her wallet instead. What card she clutched shook in her hand. She pressed it against the counter, desperate to prove her world was intact. The machine beeped once, then again declined. Her face drained of color. The man's eyes did not leave hers. The crowd held its breath. The story had only just begun. The small, flat sound of the card machine declined, seemed louder than a thunderclap. The receipt, printer, still silent, mocked her authority. Her hand trembled as she snatched the card back, glaring at the cashier as if the error were hers to bear. "Run it again," the woman demanded, her voice strained.
Ow.
No longer commanding, but pleading. Beneath the surface, the cashier, a young Latina girl, barely 20, hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the man standing calmly by the shirt still resting on the floor. Then she glanced at the growing circle of customers pressing closer. I did run it again, ma'am," she whispered, cheeks burning with embarrassment. "It didn't go through." The woman's face tightened like glass ready to crack. Her lips curled into a practiced snarl as she hissed, "This machine, this staff is incompetent." She pulled another card from her wallet, her hand shaking slightly now. She slapped it onto the counter with all the force of desperation. Disguised as anger, the cashier slid it into the machine. The crowd, silent as a congregation, waited. A beep, a pause, declined. Gasps scattered through the air like sparks. The man hadn't moved. His expression remained still, unreadable, as if he'd already seen this scene long before it played out. His calm, heavy gaze never wavered from her. That calmness, that quiet refusal to break, carried more weight than any confrontation. Somewhere, behind them, a man whispered to his wife. She accused him of stealing, and look at her now. Another voice muttered, "Karma doesn't wait long these days." The woman whipped around, eyes blazing, scanning the crowd. "Caught up, all of you, this is a mistake, I'll fix it." But her words no longer landed with authority. They landed with cracks exposing the panic she was desperate to hide. The store manager stepped forward at last. His suit was wrinkled from long hours, but his voice was steady. "Ma'am," perhaps she cut him off sharply. "Don't, ma'am. Me. This store is letting him shop freely while embarrassing me." She jabbed her finger toward the black man as though he were the cause of her unraveling world. Every head turned again. But this time the weight of eyes bore down on her, not him. The man finally moved. He crouched, picked up the last of the shirts. She'd knocked to the floor, folded it carefully, and placed it back into the shopping bag, gripped though it was. He lifted the bag by its torn handle, then looked directly at her. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Your anger doesn't scare me, but your pride, it's eating you alive in front of everyone here." The words did not echo. They sank, and they stayed. The silence afterward was suffocating. Even the music overhead, a cheerful pop song, meant to lighten the aisles, seemed distant, irrelevant. The woman's face twisted, but her eyes darted nervously now. She pulled her phone out, swiping furiously, typing in her passcode wrong 3 times before it finally unlocked. Her banking app loaded slowly, too slowly. Sweat broke across her forehead as she realized every second felt like an eternity under the eyes of strangers. She shoved the screen toward the cashier. "See? I have money. It's just the bank. They always do this to me." The cashier looked at the screen, lips pressing together in discomfort. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The display showed red notifications. Payment overdue. Account restricted. The crowd stirred again. Some shook their heads. Some exchanged knowing glances. Others looked down, unwilling to meet her humiliation with their gaze. And through it all, the man stood there, still, steady, unbroken. A quiet revolution was unfolding, not with raised fists, not with violence, but with dignity that refused to bend and arrogance collapsing under its own weight. The store manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I think perhaps you should step aside and contact your bank. You're disrupting the floor." "Disrupting?" Her voice cracked. She spun again toward the crowd. "He's the disruption. He's the one who doesn't belong here." But the words fell flat. No one nodded. No one whispered in agreement. Instead, the man turned toward the manager. "May I pay for my items now?" His voice was soft but carried. The manager nodded quickly. "Of course, sir." The woman's eyes widened, fury and panic mixing into something brittle, something fragile. No, no, you can't just let him. The cashier rang up the shirts again. The man slid his card into the machine. The beep came sharp, final. Approved, the receipt printed smoothly. He took it without even glancing at her. He only said as he gathered his bag, "Some things decline louder than cards." The line hit her harder than any refusal of payment. She stumbled back a step, clutching her bag to her chest, as if it could shield her from the truth settling heavy in the air. And though the transaction was finished, though the purchase was done, no one left. The crowd waited. They sensed something wasn't over yet. Something still lingered, finished, unresolved. And in the stillness, her own phone buzzed again in her hand. She looked down. Account frozen due to suspicious activity, her breath caught in her throat. And for the first time, her eyes darted not at him. Not at the crowd, but at the exit, as if already planning escape. The balance had shifted. But the collapse was only beginning. The store had become more than a place to shop. It was a stage. The fluorescent lights burned harshly, illuminating every nervous flicker in her eyes, every tremor in her hands. The crowd, scattered among racks and displays, became an audience unwilling to look away. Their silence was no longer neutral lit. It was heavy, thick, charged with judgment. The woman's breathing grew shallow as she clutched her tote closer. Her knuckles whitened. "Oh," she hissed at the cashier. "Call the bank. Fix this now." But her words carried no weight anymore. They were desperate, stripped of authority. The young cashier glanced at the manager for direction. He shook his head slightly. His tone was polite but firm. "Ma'am, this isn't something we can resolve here." The woman's head snapped. Toward him, her voice shrill. "Then resolve him. Look at him, why aren't you checking his bag?" "Be probably enough." The word was not loud, but it cut through everything. It came from the man. He hadn't raised his voice once, but now the quiet steel of it landed with force. The crowd stilled again. He set his bag on the counter, gently, deliberately. Then he opened it himself, pulling out the receipt once more. He laid it flat on the glass counter as if to say, "I have nothing to hide." The symbolism was undeniable. One exposed himself without fear. The other clung to excuses. A man in the crowd muttered under his breath, "She's finished." A woman, holding her toddler, whispered, "You can see it. She knows it." The whispers spread like wildfire, each one another crack in the facade she tried desperately to hold together. She spun around, eyes darting, voice pitched with panic. "Why are you all staring? Don't you get it? It's not supposed to be here. This is my store, my space." Her declaration landed wrong. The words intended to elevate her revealed something raw and ugly instead. Ownership she did not have. Power she assumed was hers. The man straightened, his presence towering yet calm. His voice was quiet again, but sharp as glass. "You think a card gives you power? But cards can decline. Receipts don't lie." The line rippled through the crowd. They weren't just watching anymore, they were absorbing, carrying it with them. The woman's face flushed. She fumbled with her phone again, scrolling frantically. Notifications stacked up. Overdue bills, emails flagged urgent, another banking alert. She tilted the screen away, shielding it as though anyone wanted to see. But the damage was done. The mask of control had slipped. Collapse was no longer something she could stop. The manager stepped closer to the man, voice low. "Sir, if you'd like, we can escort you out another way. I don't want this to escalate further." The man looked at him, eyes calm but unwavering. "Why should I leave quietly? I haven't done anything wrong. It's not me who's disrupting your store." The words settled with finality. The manager froze, caught between silence and the truth now exposed before everyone. The woman tried again, desperation spilling. "Don't believe him. Don't you see how he's manipulating you all?" But no one was nodding anymore. The crowd had shifted. Eyes that once might have looked at him with suspicion now looked at her with disgust, pity, or both. A teenager holding sneakers whispered to his friend, "She's just embarrassed. She can't stand losing." His friend answered, "Yeah, but now everyone sees it." The woman's breathing grew ragged. She clutched her tote closer, but her body language betrayed her small, shrinking, defensive. The man lifted his bag. Receipt tucked neatly inside once more. He didn't move toward the exit. Instead, he stepped slightly closer, not threatening, but steady. deliberate. His eyes locked on hers. Your accusations won't follow me out of here, but they'll follow you. Her lips parted, but no words came. The sentence lingered, haunting in its simplicity. The silence afterward was unbearable. For her, every pair of eyes felt like a spotlight. For him, it was vindication without the need for triumph. Finally, unable to endure it, she turned sharply and stormed toward the fitting rooms at the back, her heels clicking furiously against the tile. She needed space, air somewhere to hide from the humiliation swallowing her whole. The crowd parted for her, but not out of respect, out of distance, out of quiet rejection. As she vanished behind the doors, the store itself seemed to exhale. The murmurs swelled again, quiet but unanimous. The balance had changed. The story had shifted, and though she had escaped the eyes for now, the truth waited for her outside those walls. The man watched the door close behind her, then turned back to the counter. He spoke evenly, to no one in particular. Sometimes, dignity is the loudest sound in the room. The words sank into the air, sealing the moment. But deep in the fitting rooms, the woman's phone buzzed again, this time not with banking alerts, but with a name flashing across the screen. A name she did not want to see. A name tied to debts, secrets, and a life she had carefully hidden. Her unraveling was only beginning. The fitting room door slammed behind her, muffling the low buzz of voices outside. She leaned against it, chest heaving as if she had run a marathon in heels. The mirror across from her reflected back a version of herself she didn't want to see. Flushed face, streaks of sweat, lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth. For the first time, she looked. Small dot, her phone buzzed again, vibrating angrily on the narrow bench. She snatched it up with trembling fingers. The screen lit her face in cold light. Overdue balance, final notice. Another buzz, account suspended. Contact immediately. She swallowed hard, swiping them away. Then, another notification appeared when she couldn't ignore. A name she knew too well. A name that made her stomach twist. Ethan Collections. No, she whispered, pressing the phone against her chest as if she could smother the truth. Not here, not now. Her reflection mocked her desperation. The woman who once walked into this store with her chin high, eyes scanning for flaws in others, now looked like someone cornered, someone unraveling. She splashed water on her face from a small bottle in her bag, trying to regain composure. She reapplied lipstick with shaky hands, straightened her blazer, forced her smile. But the smile cracked instantly, falling apart under the weight of silence. From outside the fitting room, muffled whispers reached her ears. She pressed herself against the door to hear. She accused him. Her card declined twice. The way he stayed calm, it was like she was the one on trial. Every word stabbed at her. The fitting room walls felt smaller. Pressing in, her hand gripped the doorknob but froze. She wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Meanwhile, outside, the store's air had shifted permanently. Shoppers no longer avoided glancing at the black man. They studied him with something resembling respect. A mother whispered to her daughter, "See? That's what dignity looks like." The man himself stood quietly near the counter, not rushing, not demanding. He had made his purchase. He could leave. Yet he lingered, not out of spite, but because his presence anchored the truth in place. He didn't need to chase justice. It was unfolding around him. The store manager adjusted his tie, nervous under the weight of the silent crowd. He cleared his throat, murmuring to the man, "Sir, you're welcome to go. We'll handle her." The man's eyes remained on the fitting room door. His voice was calm, deliberate. Sometimes the truth doesn't need handling. It just needs witnesses. The line rippled outward, carried in hushed echoes. Witnesses. That's what they were now, no longer passive shoppers, but participants in a reckoning she had unknowingly summoned. Inside the fitting room, she could feel it. The pressure of their eyes, even through the walls. She unlocked her phone again, scrolling furiously, desperate for a lifeline.
Ow.
But the numbers glared back mercilessly. Overdrawn, declined. Frozen her. Phone buzzed once more. This time, a message. Ethan, if you don't pay today, I'll come find you. Her knees buckled. She sat heavily on the bench, clutching the phone. The world outside, the crowd, the man, the whispers blurred into background noise. The humiliation here wasn't just about a card. It was about a life she had built on illusions cracking in front of strangers. The longer she stayed hidden, the worse it became. Her absence turned into evidence. Her silence screamed louder than her voice had moments ago. Finally, a knock at the door. "Ma'am," came the manager's voice, careful, almost pitying. "We need you to come out now." Her throat tightened. She wiped her face quickly, smeared makeup only making it worse. She forced her voice steady. 1 minute. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But she had no minute left. She could hear them outside. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were judgments. Stories already forming in their minds, ready to travel beyond these walls. Her arrogance had written the first line, but her decline was writing the rest. The man hadn't moved. He stood like a shadow cast across the fitting room door. His calmness wasn't just his own any. It belonged to everyone watching, amplifying the contrast. Inside, she whispered to herself, "Hold it together. Just hold it together." But as she reached for her bag to reapply her lipstick once more, the phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The screen lit up again. Another message from Ethan. Clocks ticking. The sound of her own gasp filled the small space. And though no one could see her, the walls seemed to echo it outward. Carrying her collapse into the air where everyone was waiting, the fitting room door creaked open at last. Every head turned. The woman stepped out slowly, her heels clicking against the tile. Her blazer freshly adjusted, her lips carefully repainted, wore the mask of composure again, but it sat unevenly. Like makeup covering a crack too deep to hide. The crowd watched in silence. Some leaned on shopping carts, others stood mid-aisle, their items forgotten. Even the cashier paused, her hand hovering over the register. The silence was not hers anymore. It belonged to the man, and it belonged to the witnesses. She forced a smile, tilting her chin high. "Apologies for the inconvenience," she announced, her voice straining for calm. "Just a banking error. Nothing to see here." But there was everything to see. The strain in her eyes, the faint tremor in her hands. A desperate way she avoided looking at him. The man stood where he had been the whole time, still quiet, immovable. He didn't speak, didn't even shift his weight. He didn't need to. The silence had already spoken louder than her performance. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "She's pretending. She can't cover it up now. Look at him, he hasn't said a word, and he's winning." Her ears burned. She turned sharply toward the murmurs, snapping, "Mind your business." But the command had no edge. It was brittle, hollow. It's a voice begging for control that had already slipped through her fingers. She faced the man then, forcing her smile wider. "You think you've humiliated me? You think anyone here believes you? This is nothing?" The man finally blinked, his eyes steady as they met hers. His voice came low, deliberate. "Truth doesn't need belief. It stands on its own." Her smile faltered. A moment her mouth opened as if to retort, but no words came. The crowds. Silence thickened, pressing down on her shoulders. Every second she remained in that aisle, her own image cracked further. The store manager cleared his throat, stepping forward cautiously. "Ma'am, perhaps it would be best if you settled this matter outside. We have other customers waiting." "Other customers?" She scoffed, tossing her hair back. "You should be apologizing to me. I spend more here in a week than he does in a year." Her voice carried, but it landed wrong. The crowd recoiled, not in awe, but in disgust. A woman near the perfume counter whispered to her friend, "Money can't buy respect? Not anymore." The man's expression didn't change. He looked at her as though she were already finished, as though her collapse was inevitable. And then, as if to seal it, her phone buzzed again. The sound cut through the silence like a siren. She froze, fumbling to silence it, but the screen lit up before she could turn it away. Ethan, Collections, final warning. Gasp went through the crowd. Not everyone could see the name. But those closest caught it, whispering quickly, passing it along like fire. Her face drained of color. She shoved the phone into her bag, snapping, "That's private." Her voice cracked. The man tilted his head slightly, his voice soft but sharp. "It's not me exposing you. It's the truth you carry." Ash! Her knees wavered. She clutched the counter for balance, her mask slipping completely for the first time. The crowd was no longer neutral. Some shook their heads, others folded their arms. The judgment was quiet but unanimous. The collapse she feared was happening not behind closed doors, not in whispers, but right here in the open. And still, the man did not raise his voice, didn't need to. The silence that wrapped around the store was no longer neutral. It was heavy, judgmental, alive. Every shopper, every cashier, every passing face had become a witness. And she could feel their eyes pressing down on her like invisible weights. She tightened her grip on her tote. Her smile was forced, brittle as glass. "I don't have to explain myself to anyone," she announced, her voice pitched too high. Trembling beneath the veneer of arrogance, no one responded. The silence that followed was worse than words. It was rejection in its purest form. She glanced toward the exit, tempted to storm out, but she couldn't. Leaving now meant admitting defeat. So instead, she turned her fury back to the man. "Think this makes you better than me? Standing there, silent, smug, acting like some hero? You're nothing." But even as she said it, the words rang hollow. They didn't stick. It didn't land. The man's gaze never wavered. His expression held no anger, no triumph, only calm, steady dignity. That composure, that unshakable quiet, struck deeper than any accusation ever could. A young man near. The shoe racks muttered under his breath, "He doesn't need to say a word. She's destroying herself." And the truth of it echoed through the crowd. Her phone buzzed again inside her bag. She froze, as though even the sound betrayed her. With a sharp movement, she pulled it out, but her hands trembled too much. Screen lit up another message. "Ethan, don't make me come down there." Her breath caught. She quickly stuffed the phone away, but the panic in her eyes betrayed her. Someone close enough had seen the name, and the whisper traveled. "She owes money. That's what this is about." The murmurs multiplied. "She's broke. Puts on an act, but look at her, accusing someone else to hide her own mess." Her heart raced. The walls of the store seemed to close in on her. Every whispered word felt like a dagger. She snapped at them, voice sharp but shaky. "Stop talking about me. You don't know anything?" But the crowd did know. Not the details, not the full story, but they knew enough. They knew arrogance. Collapsing when they saw it, the manager tried to intervene again, voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, please, this isn't helping you. But you should helping me?" She spat, eyes blazing. "You think I need help? I don't need anything from anyone." Least of all from him. She jabbed a finger toward the man. The crowd recoiled at her tone. Her desperation was showing, bleeding through every word. The man finally moved not much, just a step forward. His presence seemed larger, his calmness louder. His voice, low and resonant, carried through the silence. "You wanted everyone to see me as less. Now they see you as empty." Her face twisted. The words hit her like a mirror shattering in front of her eyes. She shook her head violently, muttering, "No, no, no." Her composure cracked fully now. Tears pooled at the edges of her eyes, threatening to spill. She bit her lip until it bled, trying to hold herself together, but the whispers kept coming. She can't hide anymore. It's over for her. Look at him, he hasn't raised his voice once. The more they whispered, the more she unraveled. The floor beneath her heels no longer felt steady. Her body swayed as though the weight of their stares pressed. Down on her bones, finally, she slammed her toad onto the counter, shouting, "Enough. I am not the villain here." The outburst echoed through the store. But instead of restoring control, it sealed her downfall. The crowd's silence deepened, It's no longer just judgmental, but condemning. The man's reply was almost a whisper, but it carried farther than her scream. Villains never believe they are. Her knees buckled slightly. She gripped the counter to steady herself. The cracks in her mask weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures, spreading faster than she could cover. And though she tried to stand tall, though she tried to mask the tremor in her voice, the truth was visible in every shaky breath, every darting glance, every tear threatening to escape. The store, once her stage, had become her trial, and the witnesses had already delivered their verdict. Her throat burned as she swallowed. Back tears she swore she'd never let anyone see. She had spent her whole life constructing walls of status, of superiority, of wealth. But now, in the harsh fluorescent light of this department store, every brick of those walls crumbled. She scanned the faces surrounding her, dozens of strangers staring, their eyes heavy with a verdict she couldn't fight. Each whisper pierced like a pin through her skin. She's lying. She's desperate. She's finished. She shook her head frantically, clutching her toad against her chest like a shield. No, you don't understand. He's manipulating all of you. The man didn't move. He didn't even flinch. His hands remained folded calmly in front of him, his expression unreadable. His silence louder than her screams. Say something. She shouted at him, voice cracking. Defend yourself. Admit what you did. The words echoed hollowly in the air, bouncing off walls that no longer protected her. The man's quiet stillness answered more powerfully than any denial ever could. Teenage girl near the fitting rooms whispered, "Why's she so scared of her phone?" Her friend leaned closer, muttering back, "Because she's hiding something." Her phone buzzed again. She fumbled, trying to silence it, but the name on the screen flashed bright, too visible. Ethan calling. Gasps rose from the crowd. She's lying about everything. She owes someone. She's not who she pretends to be. Her chest tightened. She felt her body betray her, her hands trembling, her breathing shallow, her vision blurring around the edges. No, that's not true, she whispered, as though saying it softly would erase the truth. The store manager, now visibly uncomfortable, stepped closer. His tone was gentle, but firm. "Ma'am, I think maybe you should take this outside. This isn't good for you." She spun on him, fury reigniting. "Outside? You want me to leave so everyone believes him?" "No, I won't." Her voice cracked again, betraying her. She turned back to the man, desperate. "Why are you just standing there? Do you think you're better than me? Do you think silence makes you powerful?" For the first time in minutes he moved, raised his head slightly, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that stole the air from the room. His voice was calm. "Me, ASURED," almost a whisper, yet it cut sharper than a scream. "Silence isn't power. It's proof. Proof that the truth doesn't need to fight." The words hung in the air like a gavel. Her lips parted, but no words came. She could feel the crowd's energy shift, the weight of their judgment now completely. On her shoulders, her fortress was gone. Her stage had turned into a cage. She tried to gather herself to stand straighter, to smirk as she always did, but the smirk faltered, her lips twitching, her eyes betraying the storm inside. The whispers grew louder. "She's finished. She can't even hold herself up. You already won." Her body began to tremble, her knees weak beneath her. She stumbled back a step, nearly losing balance. She caught herself on a rack of clothes, clutching it for dear life, her face pale as the blood drained from it. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, breaths shallow and uneven. "Stop looking at me," she screamed at the crowd, her voice broken, cracking into sobs she couldn't hold back anymore. "Stop judging me. You don't know what I've been through." Her mask was gone. Her pride was gone. What remained was a woman unraveling, exposed under the harshest light of all. Truth. The man stepped forward again, his calm presence filling the space between them. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. Didn't need to. His voice was steady, carrying through the silence like a final verdict. "We don't need to know your story. Your actions already told it," the crowd murmured in agreement. their silence, turning into subtle nods, a quiet solidarity with the man who hadn't raised his voice once, and she stood in the middle of it all, gasping for air, clutching her chest, realizing she had nowhere left to hide. The walls had closed in. Her hands clawed at the air as though she could grab control and pull it back into her chest. But it slipped, faster than sand in a storm, leaving her grasping at nothing. "I'm not the villain here," she shrieked, voice sharp, brittle, collapsing under its own weight. Don't you all see it? He's dangerous, he always has been." The store had fallen into a stunned hush. No one moved. No one agreed. The quiet was suffocating, an entire crowd silently refusing to side with her. She turned in circles, her gaze desperate, searching for even one sympathetic face. A cashier shook her head slowly, folding her arms. A mother with her daughter stepped closer to the man, almost protectively, as though his calm made him safer than her hysteria. "No," she whispered to herself, trembling. No. Her phone buzzed again. Another call. Same name. "Ethan, this time." Someone spoke from the crowd. "Answer it." Her head snapped toward the voice. "Answer the call," the man repeated firmly, his arms crossed. "If you're telling the truth, why won't you answer?" the crowd murmured, agreement spreading like wildfire. "Yes, pick it up. What's she hiding?" She froze, her fingers hovering over the screen, her entire body rigid. Her chest heaved as though the simple act of pressing a button would kill her. I don't have to prove anything to you," she cried, her voice cracking, but it was too late. The silence after her refusal was louder than any confession. The crowd knew. Her mask slipped further, her tears smudging the perfect lines of her makeup, streaking down her cheeks. She sank to her knees on the glossy tile floor. The phone slipping from her hand and clattering beside her, the man finally stepped forward. Not looming but steady, his calm a stark contrast to her collapse. He bent slightly, picked up the phone, and held it out to her. "You built your life on lies," he said softly, "but lies don't survive the light. Truth doesn't ask to be believed, just is." His words struck harder than any slap, and the crowd leaned in, every ear tuned to his steady voice. She shook her head violently, covering her ears like a child refusing to listen. "Stop it. Stop talking like you're righteous. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've had to do to survive." Her words tumbled out in a frenzy, faster and faster, breaking the polished accent she once carried like armor. The cracks revealed a woman terrified, cornered, undone. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just stood there, holding her phone out, his hand steady as stone. Finally, with trembling fingers, she snatched it back. For a moment, her eyes darted to the crowd, then to the man. Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed answer. The store went silent. "Hello?" Her voice quivered, small, unrecognizable. A distorted male voice bled from the speaker. "Where are you? You promised the money by tonight. If you don't deliver." Gasps erupted around the room. She scrambled to hang up, but it was too late. Every ear had heard. Every doubt had been erased. The phone slipped from her hands again, this time shattering the last of her illusion. No. Into herself. They'll all know. They'll all know everything. The crowd stared, their silence no longer neutral, but damning. She had been unmasked not by his accusations, not by force, but by her own truth spilling out in front of everyone. The man didn't move closer. He didn't need to. Duh. His calm presence filled the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He simply said, "Your secrets betrayed you, not me." Her sobs shook her body, her pride disintegrating into salt and water on the cold floor and around them. The power dynamic shifted completely, no longer her stage, no longer her script. The man had not shouted once. He had not fought once. Yet the world had finally heard him through the silence, through the truth. The breaking point had arrived. The room had changed. The same store that once seemed hers to command her runway, her stage now felt like a cage closing in on her. Every pair of eyes weighed heavy on her trembling body. Her lips parted, struggling for words, but nothing came. Only silence, An ugly silence that betrayed her better than any witness could. "Look at her," a woman whispered. She was lying the whole time. She tried to ruin him. Each murmur was a dagger, slicing her from every angle. Clutching her arms around herself, as though she could hold her world together with sheer force, the man remained still, not basking in her fall, not smirking or gloating. He stood steady, his calm more powerful than any accusation. "You should." "Apologize," someone from the crowd said sharply. Her head snapped up, panic flaring in her eyes. "Apologize to him? He's the reason?" "No," another voice cut her off. "You are." The authority in those words shattered her protest before it even formed. Her throat tightened as her eyes darted toward the man. He didn't move. He didn't even nod, simply watched, letting truth speak for him. Her knees trembled, but pride, thin and fragile, still clung to her. "I don't have to apologize," she whispered. "You don't understand who I am. What I've done. I deserve." "Deserve what?" a teenage boy interrupted.
Special treatment.
"To humiliate someone who stayed calm while you fell apart?" The crowd murmured again, stronger this time. No one defended her. Not one voice rose in her favor. Her hands shook as she wiped her tears. Her mascara streaked like black rivers down. Her pale cheeks. She was no longer the untouchable woman, no longer the one holding the room in her grip. She was just a human, fragile, exposed, undone. The man finally spoke, his voice low, steady, carrying across the silence like a drumbeat. "You wanted me silent?" Her head jerked toward him, startled. "You thought if I stayed quiet, you'd win. But silence isn't weakness. It's patience. Patience outlasts lies." Gasps rippled through the room. His words, simple yet sharp, landed harder than her screams ever had. Her chest heaved. She staggered backward, bumping into a shelf. For the first time, she looked small-shrunken in her own shadow. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered, "to live every day afraid someone will find out what you've done. To lie just to keep breathing." The crowd leaned, in their faces twisted with both pity and disgust. Her confession poured out like poison finally uncorked. "I lied because I had to. I ruined people because if I didn't, they'd ruin me. Don't you see I never had a choice?" The words hung in the air, trembling, but no one was moved. Instead, the truth became her noose, tightening with every syllable. The man didn't yell. He didn't condemn. He only stepped closer, slow, deliberate. His presence silenced even her ragged breathing. Then he spoke again. "Choice is in how you treat others. You chose cruelty. Cruelty doesn't survive forever." Her knees buckled. She fell this time, not out of drama, but defeat. Her palms pressed to the cold floor, her tears dripping onto the tiles like tiny shattering stars. For a moment, the world was quiet. So quiet that her sobs sounded like thunder. Then the applause started. It was small at first, one pair of hands, clapping from the back, then another, until the sound grew into a storm, filling the store with thunderous approval. Not for her, for him. The man didn't bow. He didn't smile. He simply stood, his quiet dignity soaking into every corner of the room. The woman looked up through blurred eyes. Realizing the truth she had fought so hard to bury, she had lost not because he shouted, but because he never needed to. Her world had collapsed in silence. While his dignity rose louder than her lies ever could, the store had gone still, like someone had pressed pause on the world. Only the sound of the cashier's quiet voice lingered. "Ma'am, your card has been declined again." The words hung in the air, heavier than a siren. For a moment, the white woman stood frozen, her lips trembling but refusing to form words. She turned toward the crowd, desperate for someone to step forward, someone to remind her that she was still in control. But no one did. Eyes that had once cheered her false confidence now stared with pity or worse, disgust. Her face burned. "Red. This is a mistake," she barked, slamming her palm on the counter. "Run it again." The cashier sighed, patient but firm. "Ma'am, we've already tried. 3 times. Ah!" Her hands trembled as she dug frantically into her designer purse, pulling out card after card, each one flashing like a desperate plea. One by one, they were swiped. One by one, the screen answered back with a cold rejection. Declined. Declined. The sound wasn't a beep anymore. It was a gavel, slamming down her judgment. From the corner, Marcus stood quietly, arms still crossed over his chest. His calm presence hadn't shifted since the beginning, so he had known all along that dignity required no defense. The woman spun toward him, her voice cracking. "Don't you say a word." But Marcus didn't move. Her the same way he had from the start, steady, unshaken, a mirror of everything she couldn't destroy. And then, he finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the store like thunder rolling over mountains. "You wanted everyone to believe I didn't belong here." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "But it seems your money didn't either," Ripple went. Through the crowd, gasps, whispers, quiet nods of agreement. The woman stumbled backward, her body language no longer sharp and commanding but small, shrinking. The more she reached for power, the further it slipped from her hands. The manager cleared his throat, stepping forward. His voice, once hesitant, now carried the weight of the moment. "Ma'am, I think it's best if you leave. We don't tolerate false accusations here." That was the strike she hadn't expected, the institution itself finally speaking. Choosing not to protect her entitlement, she shook her head violently. "You can't do this to me. I'm a loyal customer. Do you know who I am?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, his calm expression never breaking. "We all know now." The crowd broke its silence. A young woman near the aisle muttered, "She humiliated him for nothing." Another voice from the back added, "All because of the color of his skin." The truth had finally shifted from whispered doubt to undeniable acknowledgement. The woman's breaths grew shallow. Her pride was cracking, her mask slipping. Desperation, she grabbed the shopping bag she had tried to claim earlier, clutching it as though it were proof of her worth. But Marcus stepped forward, not fast, not angry, just steady. He reached out, took the bag gently from her hands, and set it back on the counter. Then, without a word, he pulled a card from his wallet, slid it across to the cashier, and nodded. The screen lit up instantly. Approved, the green glow filled the silence. Like a verdict of truth, the symbolism was undeniable. Her lies, her arrogance, her entitlement had all collapsed in front of everyone. And he, the man she had tried to erase with words, had the quiet power to end the scene not with rage, but with dignity, as the receipt printed. Marcus took it, folded it neatly, and looked at her one last time. "This," he said, holding it up, "is the only proof anyone here needed." He slipped it into his pocket. The woman staggered, her hands empty, her presence smaller than the shadow she cast. No one followed her as she stumbled toward the door. The automatic sensors opened with a mechanical hiss, but the silence behind her was louder than any protest. When the doors closed, it felt finally like a chapter had truly ended. Marcus stood, still for a moment, breathing in the weight of what had just happened. The eyes of the crowd weren't hostile now. They weren't suspicious. They carried something different: respect, recognition, even guilt. An older man near the counter cleared, his throat breaking the silence. "Son, I saw what she did to you. I saw how you stood tall through it. That mattered." Marcus nodded, a quiet smile touching his lips. Sometimes the truth speaks loudest when we don't have to shout it. Forward, awkward, but sincere. "On behalf of the store, I apologize for what you went through." Marcus didn't need it. He didn't even answer. Instead, he turned, receipt still folded in his pocket, and walked toward the exit. Each step echoed softly against the polished floor, the sound of dignity refusing to bow as the doors opened. For him, the light of the afternoon spilled in golden, steady, unbothered by the chaos left behind. He stepped outside, the world stretching wide before him, and for the first time since it all began, the air felt lighter. Not because the fight was over, racism was never a single battle, but because in this moment, truth had won. Behind him, the store remained frozen in memory. Ahead of him, the future carried new weight. He walked forward, shoulders unbroken, dignity intact, and the receipt in his pocket. It wasn't just proof of purchase, It was proof of survival, proof of truth, proof that silence could sometimes roar louder than hate.